Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another off-the-cuff chat with me, FPL Mez. And today I have a very, very special guest. I've got Pras with me. So, hey, Pras, I hope you can hear me and everything is coming through clearly.
Yep, I'm just trying to figure out my side. So,
Oh, there we
hi,
go.
can you hear me
Yes, I can. Amazing. How are you?
on both the channel and on Spaces, right?
I really hope so. So we should be
Okay.
connected on YouTube as well, and it seems like everyone's found a new link. So um, apologies for that. I started the stream and then somehow very quickly ended the stream. So it was like it happened in a flash. Did you miss it?
Well, I think we're good. People can hear us. So, well, I'll start with thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Pras. No, it's a pleasure to have you on, and thank you for agreeing to come on as well. I think it was really timely, just because we're going into international break as well, and there's lots of questions that are coming out of the last sort of 12 game weeks that we've had as well. But look, before we sort of head into conversation about, FPL, and I just want to remind everyone that if you're listening on Spaces, this is very, very much one-sided. So I'm not going to be able to take any speakers. So what we're doing is we're pulling Spaces into YouTube, and this is also being, presented on YouTube as well. So I'm just going to while we get sort of talking, I just realized that you're slightly off screen, so I don't know if that's like my positioning.
I can
No,
move the
yeah,
camera a bit.
yeah, no, that's great, perfect, amazing, yeah, yeah, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, so it's fairly one-sided. These are very off-the-cuff conversations. There's very little prep gone into these as well. So I warn you now, Pras, like you'll be doing this on the fly. And I know you do those really well anyway, so I'm pretty sure that it's probably going to be okay, like to just go completely off the cuff. But this time round, because we are doing a bit of planning and we're going to have a lot of conversation around planning for the upcoming fixtures and, of course, some of the blank game weeks and all of that coming up. There is a little bit of few more visuals than usual that we'll sort of share and go through, at the same time. And of course, thank you so much for those that are sort of tuned in on YouTube as well. Really appreciate you being there. Sorry about the link issue there. And your reactions will come through. So if you're on Spaces, your reactions will come through onto YouTube as well. So feel free to kind of like send some hearts or emojis, whatever you fancy as well. Like we'll sort of, take whatever we can get. So Pras, before I set this stream up, especially, I asked a whole bunch of people that I'm connected to over here in Australia, especially, and a few other friends, abroad as well, that we've sort of been making friends with through the FPL community on Twitter, especially. What sort of things that they would love to kind of hear about and talk about as well, and of course we're covering a lot of that from an FPL point of view. However, a lot of people were curious about your view, funny enough. So
Okay.
this came up in conversation. So for those of you that are listening on Spaces, I've got you would have seen this if you're following Pras on Twitter, especially. Pras shares a lot of the time. He shares like views of his office, like wherever he is, or I'm guessing it's your office. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But funny enough, I had quite a few people ask, what does Pras do for work, basically? And I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I can ask that question, but maybe Pras will be able to tell us, because Pras, look, you come across like someone who is very analytical, of course, and very strategic minded as well, which is something that I valued personally, like going, looking at your videos and getting to know you through the videos as well, and the content that you create. But tell us more about what you do and how that sort of links in with FPL as well, and if it does.
Um, I mean, I'll try to be a little bit high level because I don't usually talk about work too much in with this handle.
Of course.
But look, I work in finance.
Yep.
I joined a bank in 2010. That's how I actually ended up in London. And I worked with that particular bank for 6, 7 years. Then I did something within finance called private equity. So basically buying minority stakes in companies. And now I work for the last 4 years, I work for a multilateral development bank. And people will not know this, but you can think of things like World Bank or IMF or things like that. So it's basically doing finance, but actually helping emerging markets and things like that. So long story short, I do work with numbers. I do a lot of modeling in
Yeah.
the past, and now I evaluate companies and value companies for a living. So that's
Amazing.
where maybe the analytical side of things comes about.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, and I had a feeling it was something like that. But like for me, in the work that I do a lot of scenarios and work through a whole bunch of scenarios with people that I work with, teams I work with, or execs or etc. And sometimes like I overdo it, and so with the planning side of things, yeah, I tend to kind of go a little bit sort of overkill with that as well. But with that as well, so from a planning point of view, I just wanted to kind of put this one up here as well. So, I came across you, Pras, when you were doing Burning Questions with, Andy Sonaldo. And that was actually my first season of FPL, which was, so this is my third season of FPL, but in my first season, I was actually in lockdown. So I got back from the UK. And I was in lockdown for 2 weeks, and that was in a hotel after I'd got returned, and so I was talking to a few people about like how do I learn about this game called FPL that I've decided that I'm going to sort of get involved with and try and play. And then I think I must have gone onto YouTube and just kind of Googled at the time questions about FPL, I think is what I sort of ended up Googling. And obviously this is not from exactly when I'd sort of watched it, your first couple of videos, but that's when I really enjoyed. And so my first season was the 21-22 season. And so I absolutely fell in love with how you both were sort of, like going through those burning questions, I guess, and how you were analyzing those as well. So is that like, were you sort of like in the world of content creation around this time, or was it before then? Because obviously that's when I got to know you through, the work that you've been doing.
That was my first season as well in content creation, which
Oh,
sounds really odd
wow.
because I had
Yeah.
never, I mean, I was a fantasy football scout consumer of, they have a really good website. And this isn't, by the way, an advertisement at
No.
all. I've been a member for years. And all I did was basically post comments in my free time, in my evenings, come home, talk football with people, because that's been a passion of mine for 30 plus years. So giving away my age a bit. But, it's just something I enjoyed. And so over lockdown is when I created a Twitter account, which was
Yeah.
basically January 2020. So just before the lockdown.
Yeah.
Never used it. Then we went into lockdown and, Project Restart happened. And I just started tweeting about stuff. And then I found a lot of the same people who I knew through Fantasy Football Scout forums, which are Andy, Let's Talk FPL, Late Riser, Zofar. There are many, basically a
Yeah.
lot of the old school guys. And I was like, okay, you are all on Twitter as well. And so I just started tweeting stuff. And then Joe from Scout basically said, we do this series called Meet the Manager.
Yeah.
Which is basically they talk about managers who've got a history of playing FPL and decent ranks. Did that again. You've got nothing to do. It's lockdown. So yeah, let's do a video. And then basically Az reached out and said, look, if you want to do a series, then think about that. And that was the same time when Sonaldo had started his own spaces as well, the enablers with Bruno. I
Ah,
got on one of the
okay.
spaces and I said, look, do you want to do something just the two of us? I don't know what we'll do, but I don't want to do what everybody else does, which is talk about our team, just the 2-3 things, then next week's transfers and then finish. Let's do something slightly different, which is, we'll just sort of keep it 2 point, answering some of the questions, long-term planning. That's how Burning Questions evolved. And so that when you heard it, that was the first season of Burning Questions.
Oh, incredible. And that was right at the beginning as well, I think. So I would have probably caught maybe the first couple. I didn't even realize, I thought maybe you guys had been doing it for a really long time. And, here I am sort of, starting on that FPL journey. But it's helped me a lot, that first year especially.
Appreciate it.
I didn't, I mean, I say it's all relative, right? Like I say that I didn't have a great first season, but I'm having a terrible, third season. But my first season, I think I ended, 190 within 200K. So I was really happy with that. Like, obviously, when you're playing for the first time, you don't know what good looks like, right? You don't know
Yeah,
if
yeah.
this is working, this is not working. And so, yeah, for me, it was. yeah, definitely really interesting experience and sort of watching your videos and learning lots from it. And funny enough, you probably don't remember this, but I actually featured on one of your videos.
Of course, I
So
remember it. I
you
remember it.
remember?
Yeah. Your sticky notes and your whole planning process. I mean, it was
That's
really
not
incredible. And I
changed.
see, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's incredible. You must do this for work as well. I mean, you must be like a visual memory person with a
Yes.
lot of sticky notes, right?
Yeah, I remember a little while ago when I went to the doctor asked me, do you sit at your desk a lot, for work? And I was like, actually, no. I'm usually in front of a whiteboard on my feet with a stack of post-it notes in my hand and a Sharpie or a whiteboard marker, and occasionally make the mistake of talking, writing on the wall with a Sharpie as well. But yeah, no, this is what I live and breathe, working with post-it notes and doing a lot of ideation and doing a lot of, planning with the teams that I work with and, different environments and sectors I work with. And so for me, doing planning like this is very natural and
Right.
something that gives me joy and comfort when I'm looking at this. But I think it was Andy, so FPL mode Andy this time, who, like, I think someone had said something about like him using planning using paper was like a bit of a negative reaction to him using paper. And I was like, oh my god, I mean, I use pen and paper all the time. Like, I work in digital, but I love just writing things down and doing planning, in a physical sort of, way, and then using the board. And like I say, it's not changed much. I'm still using the board, although my technique or the way I sort of approach it now has evolved. So yeah, it's less kind of, I'm not using as many sort of I'm not putting all the fixtures on there like I was. I'm keeping it a bit more
Yeah.
lower fidelity. Do you
I mean,
do?
to be honest, we've been spoiled more recently with all the planners, with the modeling, the FPL reviews, where you can actually visualize your team a lot better in 4 5 weeks. It's bittersweet, right? And I think it's made things easier for everyone. But for people like myself, and it sounds like yourself as well, I always had my team in an Excel. And I always had the fixtures for each of my players. What does it look like? I used to manually color it red if I felt that there's a difficult fixture. So plan my transfers. I had an Excel sheet for every season. And now over the last couple of seasons, I don't do it because I go on planners a lot more. I can put my team in review. And if a review is telling me to sell X player in game week 17, it's basically saying that the fixtures turn from game week 17. So it does make you lazier, but there's other benefits and you can still, the benefit of planning never goes.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like I say, I've got slightly better with it. So I don't know if you can see it on the screen there, but I've got like Lego Mane's hop on, hop off now as a printout that I've put next to the post-it
Yeah.
notes. So I'm not sort of capturing, the extra bit of detail there, which is really funny. I mean, I do enjoy it, but you're right. Like there's so much like good things, available there. Interestingly, one of the questions that came up as well when I asked around was when did Pras get into supporting United, and how long have you been a United supporter? And I remember seeing this pop up on Twitter, and I wanted to share it as well because I have really fond memories of like my dad taking me to the football, and I used to live very close to Selhurst Park, and so for me going to a match was usually a Crystal Palace match. And I think my first Crystal Palace match, I think I must have been 8 years old or something like that. My dad took me, and it was Palace versus Grimsby Town or something like that. It was just one of those I don't know, like League Cup games or something like that. I'm not sure, but yeah, this was a nice picture for you to share. But yeah, how long have you been a United supporter then?
Um, so I mean, background, my family moved to East Africa, which we were talking before the stream.
Yeah,
Also happens to be your family who were there. Obviously, different times, but yeah, we moved to East Africa when I was, I think, 10 years old, and I used to go to a British school there, and a lot of the kids used to follow football. We actually used to play a mini fantasy football game there as well, where we all used to have
really.
uh, and this was just manual, right? People used to just do it on paper. Five of us used to pick basically six players. So you can always call it like a hybrid draft version where
Yeah,
it wouldn't be
wow.
the six. So we couldn't have the same players, but it just made it interesting. And I ended up picking a lot of the Man United players. So I was sort of the first year, I was simply just rooting for my players that I had in my draft. And one thing led to another. That was also the time where Eric Cantona joined Man United, just became something that
Yeah.
I started to follow, root for. One of them was a Liverpool fan, one was a Spurs fan, one was a Chelsea fan, there was another Man United fan. So it just sort of, we all picked our sides, and that's how it
Mm,
started. So there was no connection to Manchester as such, but it just became a thing where we talked about it all the time. So from the age, I was in East Africa for about 8 to 10 years. In fact, the
yeah.
last couple of years were in and out. And we were sort of, football was the thing. And
Yeah.
first thing when I did was, when I sort of started, after college, when I traveled to London. My first game was, I think, 2007, when Man United beat Arsenal 2-1 at the Emirates
Mm,
or Highbury. I forget which, if the stadium was built by then or not. But
yeah.
um, and I've followed the team since. So this particular post was because I started following the team when I was 10,
Yeah.
and my son is close to 10 as well. So
Oh wow, yeah. And how does your son feel about Man United at the moment?
not great, not great. I have to be very honest with you. There are moments where, we watch the game and he's obviously upset that the other team
Yeah.
scored. And like the FA Cup final, all excited. We're gonna watch the final, and Gundogan scores in, what was it, 30 seconds or less.
Mm, mm.
And there's moments where I've gone to him and said, look, if you wanted to think about a more local club, I could take you to the games, because we live literally 5 minutes from the Arsenal stadium, maybe more, maybe
Oh
10 minutes.
wow. Okay.
So I told him, look, if you want to think about, a better team, if this is giving you too much disappointment, he's like, are you going to switch? I said, I will never switch. But you're still
Too late
young
for
enough
me. Yeah.
that you can get away with not supporting a team that, gets you depressed every single day.
Oh.
You can, but he doesn't want to. So he's happy to support the team. I don't know how long it'll last. His whole passion for football started after the World Cup, which is a lot of when kids sort of start getting into
Yeah,
football,
that's right.
the Messi World Cup. So it's only been about a year since he started following it, but it's good.
That's amazing. That's amazing, and that's such a great story as well. And I love that. And you're absolutely right. I think it's too late to switch clubs, right? Like Liverpool were having a terrible season last season. I had loads of people like in Australia. Obviously, they call it soccer over here, which I refuse to do. And whenever the conversation comes up about like last season, especially, oh yeah, I support Liverpool. They're sort of like, oh yeah, I heard they're doing pretty shit at the moment, and I'm like, yes, okay, let's move on from that. And would you support another team? And I was like, nah, it's too late for me. It's not going to happen. But like you say, I think
It's too
like
late.
when through school, everyone was supporting the top, top sort of four clubs or six clubs also back then. So it was either, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United. I don't think City was really in the equation at the time, at least when I was in school. And
Not at all.
Liverpool. And so, yeah, I was big Ian Rush fan, as well. So that's what I grew up with. But Pras, like before we sort of move on to sort of deeper FPL related conversation, of course your content creation venture then took you to Sky as well, which I couldn't find a photo of, but of course you and Andy ended up on Sky Sports as well. That was fantastic to see. Great that Andy was able to come over from South Korea as well. Like how
Yep.
exciting for him. But also on the fantasy show, you've been sort of making your regular on there now, right?
We're semi-regular. Yeah, I mean, we're basically a panel of four that go. But look, I honestly, it's difficult to talk about it because it feels unreal, right? I mean, again, as
Yeah.
I mentioned, 3.5 years ago, I was doing nothing.
Mm.
I'd never been on a YouTube video, and to now end up doing some of this stuff is, again, just it's unreal. And it's if anyone thinks, pursue your hobbies. I mean, it's, if you like doing your hobby, and you have a platform to talk about it, to do more with it, then it can take you anywhere. I still find it incredible that there's, I've had these opportunities to go on these shows, and I'm sure as these things expand more globally, more people get involved. I saw who was it? So there was an Australian content creator. Who was it more recently? Who was on the FPL show as well? Um,
Uh, would that
it'll
have
come to
been
me. It'll come to me.
Brett? Like, sorry, no, Ryan Inzaghi. Yeah, FPL
Sorry,
Inzaghi.
you're breaking up. I can't hear.
Can you hear me now? Is that back? Might be.
Can you hear me, Mira?
Yeah, I can hear you. How is that? Is that any better? Sorry, this is probably more so for Spaces than YouTube, I think. Like the connection's probably a little bit.
Yeah, it must be Spaces. I can hear you now. It just went
Yeah.
for a second, and I could hear like a
Oh,
robotic sound. But yeah,
oh gosh, okay. Sorry about
yeah.
that. I think it
No,
was
no, no, it's fine.
I think it was Inzaghi. Yeah, so Ryan
Yes,
Inzaghi
it was
who
Inzaghi. Correct.
yeah. So
Yes.
he mentioned that he was that he got this opportunity to do so, and we've got FPL Planner TN in the chat as well. I actually caught up with Planner and Inzaghi. It feels like a lot longer ago, but I think it was only like a
Yeah.
month ago or so in Canberra. So like Ryan is now in Canberra, and I used to live in Canberra for a little while. So does Planner. Small world because it's such a tiny city, and then we found all these FPL managers in Canberra all of a sudden. So yeah, there you go. But yeah, no,
This is why
he
FPL is
mentioned.
so great, right? Yeah.
Oh, and it's brought everyone together. I think, like, over here in Australia, especially, I didn't know that there were so many different FPL managers over here, but also content creators as well. And yeah, it's so nice to see. Okay, so moving on, we'll sort of switch conversation now to
Yeah.
so when I asked a whole bunch of people about what they wanted to hear about. Interestingly, it wasn't too much about talking about Game Week 12, especially because obviously Game Week 12 is Game Week 12, what we've sort of all
Yeah.
experienced, and not so great for me. I captained Watkins. However, one of the things that did come up was to have a quick chat about from a very high level helicopter view. I know you do a lot of helicopter views and macro sort of level views as well, but a very high level season review, of your season so far. Any sort of, highlights or pivotal moments that stand out for you. And I think earlier in, like, so I've been doing YouTube to Spaces now for about 3 months. It's coming up to 3 months. I can't believe it feels like it's been longer, but it's actually only been 3 months. And I did a retrospective at the last international break where I used like a online collaboration board this time rather than physical sort of post-it notes, and tried to look back at some of the decisions I'd made along the way, and could I have done anything differently? Should I have sort of not taken out Salah, for example, when I did earlier on in the season, and just and see if I can learn from those decision making process, or I'm not going to call them mistakes, because I think, like, I mean, you may think that it was a mistake, but I feel like it was a conscious decision that I was making, about that. So, any moments for you, like from your season perspective, from so far?
I think, look, I tend not to look back too much, because as long as I'm happy with the decisions, which I'm usually am, because I do think through the decisions a lot, I can't really regret the outcomes, right? So that's how I tend to think about the seasons. It's very difficult at the end of the season to say, I'm going to target 10K or 100K or whatever. I think you just need to sort of have a process. And I think I followed my process this season. And so far, I haven't been luckier than I would have hoped to be,
Yeah.
which is basically what it is. And a lot of people like me started with Man United picks. I had two of them. They had a lot of Chelsea picks, and they had the fixtures, they had the data, and they were good picks. And until game week 7, it did not work out holding them. So basically, people who wildcarded early, who lost patience with them, they benefited. Was that the right call? I don't think it was the right call, because I still think that picking good players from good teams with good fixtures was fine. But it's at the end of the day, if you wildcarded in game week 4 and chucked out all your Chelsea and Man United players and picked the Villa, maybe even a Salah, and got your Man City guys, you did well. So
Yeah.
does that mean it was wrong to do that? No. So I'm happy with the process of how I did it. I was always going to wildcard in either 8 or 10. When I sort of reached game week 6, my horizon for wildcard changed to game week 10. And a lot of people talk about this, should we have wildcarded in game week 8? You can see here, I got green arrows from game week 8, even though I didn't wildcard in game week 8. And it's actually been okay since the wildcard.
Yeah.
I was, 3.6 million going into game week 8, and now I'm under a million. And I think it's fine. I think there's so much of the season left that for the moment, if you ask me what my goal is, I can still win FPL if I'm really lucky by the end of the season. So
I love that.
I don't think anything changes.
No, I love that, and I think that's really helpful for me, to hear, especially because in comparison, like if I show you my season in comparison, it's just been a really tough kind of. I started off in the 1 mil sort of mark, but I've just been hovering around, anywhere between 2 mil, occasionally, actually within 2 mil to 3. I think I hit 4, at one point. However, I've been looking at it from how do I make incremental sort of adjustments and changes to make progress, right? And just, keep at it and look at it as a challenge, basically. Because like last season, I had a really good start to the season. And so, it changed the way I was playing. I was looking at it from an entirely different perspective, as well, and probably making more gut calls along the way as well, and trying to be ahead of what we deem as the template. And I know we're going to be talking about the template a little bit more as well. But yeah, I found it especially difficult to make progress. But you're absolutely right. It's so earlier on in the season as well. And we are very much bunched together too. So I think, it's really nice to hear. And I'm sure others that are listening as well that have similar sort of predicaments at the moment of like just not making the progress. It's really good to know. And yeah, no, well done, to you. Like, I think like I saw FPL mode Andy, like he had tweeted out saying, he thinks that his wildcard in 8 was successful, and that's great. I was looking at, when I played my wildcard, and yeah, I don't know if it was, it was successful or not, but it meant that I could, it's too early to say, but it meant that I could rejig my entire team. And last 2 game weeks, I've been able to, sort of go into each game week with 2 free transfers, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to not have to make too many changes. But now I'm, in a place where I'm thinking, how do I make progress? How do I sort of, we are still bunched up. So how do we sort of make some of those leaps if we want to make leaps as well? So yeah, it's really, it is quite hard. And I think like you've been playing FPL, 13, 15 years or so?
When I came to the country, 2010.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
there you
12,
go.
13 years.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think we're going to talk a bit more about that anyway, to just kind of go into, how do we make some of those how do we shift basically from a template point of view. And I'll see if I can find like the template sort of conversation. So
just on Mira, just on looking back, if people
yeah.
want to do the same thing, I think
Yeah.
what you need to do is not look at the color of the arrows. You need to look
Yes.
at the game weeks where your ranks are over 6 million, right? Or 7 million. Because those are the game weeks where you've really lost to the crowd. And then you also need to look at game weeks where you have sub million ranks. And the more sub million ranks you will have, obviously this is all obvious, but you need to actually think about the weeks where you had the sub 8, 10 million ranks and really look into it in terms of, was it bad luck?
Yeah.
Because, people had sub 10 million ranks last week where they got a score of 12 or 14. A lot of it was pure bad luck. Or you need to think, was I sort of wrong in my decision making? And when there's actually 3 weeks, so in my case, as you can see, game week 5, 6, 7, 3 consecutive weeks of 7, 7, 7 million ranks. It's basically because I was late to jump on Newcastle.
Okay.
I was simply, you can call it rigid, but I think it was the right decision, but wrong outcome on Man United. So this is the way I would look at sort of your season and evaluate. And then when you think about the future, I don't think you need to think about how can I differentiate right now. I mean, just play well. That's your differentiating factor. If you're in game week 37 and you want to catch your mini league rival who's 50 points ahead of you, then you can think about, okay, I'm going to play different now. He's going to triple captain, or he's going to captain Salah. I'm going to go different, and I'm going to captain Darwin Núñez, or, like Foden or something, because I have to, in this only one game week, I have to do something crazy different to catch. Right now, even until game week 35, 36, just focus on good decisions. Sorry, you
Good
didn't ask for
decisions.
the
No,
high
no.
level advice, but
No,
just,
please
yeah.
do. No, please, please do. And, we've just got Marcus FPL Bateman who just said, I'm thinking of employing Pras to drum some common sense into people at my workplace. But these are precisely the types of scenarios that people are, that play through minds and mine as well, like having sort of, I don't have the experience that a lot of, like you FPL managers who've been playing for more than 10 years, especially. So how to deal with sort of these types of scenarios, right? Having sort of been only doing this for like 3 seasons, it's really difficult. How do you sort of convince yourself to be patient, right? How do you convince yourself that
Right.
no, continue making good decisions? It's only through conversations like these, and with others that I have. I try not to get heavily influenced by what's happening on FPL Twitter, especially because it is a bubble, and there is
Yeah.
very much a kind of a herd mentality kind of thing going on there as well. And it's very challenging not to kind of go, well, how is it everyone's making progress, but I'm not? But then I'm actually happy with the decisions that I'm making as well. So it's a conflicting thought.
Yeah. I mean, the more you play, you'll get a process of how you think about things. When you see a bandwagon on Twitter, you will know how to evaluate that. Look, I think the most common one is underlying data, where people say, if I see for a long enough time things that people are talking about from the eye test, then I will believe it. If I
Yeah,
don't see it, then I will be super skeptical about it. And even if I
mm,
buy that particular player, I understand the dynamics of my team, where if I'm buying a punty pick, then I know that if it goes wrong, I have enough transfers to make it up, because the rest, 13 out of my 15 players look great.
that's
I
right.
don't mind going different for my transfer this week, a terrible one, which is basically Simicast to Livramento. But I did it because I know that the rest of my team looked great. And
Yeah,
so for this week, I can make that punty pick, because if it doesn't work out, I have two free transfers going after the international break. I
that's
actually
right.
don't need to change any of my forward line. Obviously, the punishment was too severe, which is 15 points difference
I
between what
know.
Livramento scored and Simicast. But that's not the decision, it's the outcome. So no worries.
I look, I totally agree, with that. And I think this is where I've sort of, I write down some of these notes and kind of go, okay, well, you know what? I was going to bench Simicast anyway. So I've got Trippier in my team. And I've got Cash, and I was playing also Gabrielle as well, which I'm not going to have a rant about, and it's a huge surprise that I haven't sworn already as well. Although my mug is very much kind of like exactly my sentiments at the moment with where things are at. But I've still got Gabrielle in my team from week one basically. But look, I took out Simicast and I had two free transfers, and honestly, not a lot of things to do with my team. And so I was quite happy with it. I was going to bench Simicast, probably bench Simicast in against Man City as well. So I thought, why don't I just free up some cash because I didn't have any money in the bank. So I brought in Lascelles and benched Lascelles basically, and so I was happy
Right.
with that decision. But of course, Simicast is now sort of become a bit of a template pick as well now. So yeah, I was quite surprised to see that, but also not surprised as well because I think when there's a bandwagon, there's really a bandwagon, isn't there?
There is indeed. There is indeed. But look, I mean, I just think it's one of those things. You can't beat yourself too much about it. And look, your season is fine. I think you can easily turn it around in 3 weeks. I mean, there were people last year that were ranked a million
Yeah,
at the, that halfway point, not even halfway, the World Cup break. They
yeah,
finished 10K, 50K, whatever your rank
that's
goals are.
right.
And ultimately, don't stress yourself anyway about that. I mean, you'll do well. And actually, the biggest way, the reason for engaged managers to catch up this year is there is no wildcard to reset people's teams. So if teams that are
Yes,
actually in bad shape will get worse if they make worse transfers. And I'm not saying the competition is high or higher than it's ever been, because there's a lot of engaged managers,
yeah.
but you have the best chance to catch up.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm looking at it as a challenge. I'm looking at it as a challenge to, like you say, just continue making good decisions, continue sort of, looking at each game week, be the best that you can be and not sort of, not to freak out, basically. So on the screen, what I've got, so this is a really nice visual that. So Fuad, so at the Fuad Bro, all one word, has been doing some really good visuals recently, and he's been posting them, on Twitter and yeah, I've been sort of pulling those into some of my streams because I just like the way they look. And so the other day, actually just yesterday, so huge thank you and shout out to Fuad, who I sort of asked him and said, hey, do you have a visual for template teams? And he was like, no, I haven't really, thought about doing that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm thinking about sort of, talking about this with Pras. And so he very, very kindly whipped something up, for us to sort of have a look at and talk about. And it's probably a little bit tiny on the screen, but I will wait for Fuad to post out his beautiful visual, and I'll retweet it as well. But what we've got on the screen is basically the template of the top 10K, top 100K, top 500K, and top mil at the moment. And what's really interesting with this template is that they're all very similar. There's not much variation between them. I think in some there's so in the top 10K, there's a Diaby in there and a Bowen in there. However, in the top 1 mil, you don't have Diaby in there. You've got Mitoma in there instead, for example. So really, the conversation around this, and so many people had actually dropped me a note to say it'd be great to talk about template and basically how do we see it evolving? Do we see it evolving too much? What sort of players are we taking out? What sort of players are we thinking about bringing in? And I know we're going to go into the fixture conversation as well, but just
Yep.
template specifically would be good to have a bit of a chat around it.
Sure. First thing to talk about when we look at these team lineups is they look super strong. And just to say, this team isn't affordable by anyone.
No.
These are just
No.
the highest picked players. So no person actually in the top 10K or 500K or whatever has this team.
That's
But
right.
you're right that these are the players that we're all almost against, if that's the pool you're sort of competing against or you want to beat. So I think the only way to do it is this season, because the pricing is so kind, that you just have to have conviction on your picks and have reason not to have other picks. And there will be weeks where other picks do well and yours don't, and vice versa. And you just hope that over a course of a long period of time, your picks will do better than the other ones. Because look, if you look at the template here, Mitoma versus Diaby, no difference. I mean, they both had great fixtures, game week 10 onwards. People who had Mitoma missed out on the best fixture on paper of the season, which is home to Sheffield United, because he was benched. Diaby gets a phantom assist for something that, maybe he kicks. I don't know. So, yeah, I mean, you can't do anything about that. I mean, you
No.
made a choice. Mitoma was a good pick, and that is what it is. So if your choice was based on fixtures, long-term fixtures, just live with it. The other thing is, let's look at Bowen. I mean, some people have Bowen, some have Palmer, some have Gordon. These are all in and around that price bracket. I know Bowen's more expensive, but these are similar sacrifices people are making as a fourth midfielder. You can't do anything. If
No.
Palmer gets a penalty, Gordon sort of, even though he played up front, but couldn't do anything against Bournemouth, just have to accept the outcome. So I think in terms of thinking about template, this is actually a season where you don't have to actually look at the ownership. In fact, it's a good way to think about and say, I don't care about the ownership, because there's about 20 good picks that I can pick.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to. So there's two ways ownership can hurt you. One, you're scared and you say, okay, Bowen's now getting increasingly owned. He's 50% owned, so I must own him. Or you can get into the mentality of, okay, Bowen's 50% owned. I will never make ground if I have Bowen.
Yes.
So I'm going to pick someone else like Kudus.
Yeah.
I think both are wrong. Both are not the right way to think about it.
Yeah.
The way to think about it is to say, I think Mbumo is a better pick. I think he's on penalties. I back myself that Mbumo is lower owned. Actually, ownership, like I said, doesn't matter. I'm going to pick Mbumo going forward.
Yes.
Even though he blanks in game week 18. And I will, hopefully, when people realize in game week 16 that he's such a good pick, They'll be scared of the blank, and I'll make my gains. That's the way
Yeah.
I would think about it.
I love that, and I've just popped up on the screen the template ownership trend, and yeah, Franz just said Lord Brian Mbumo. Yeah, look, I completely agree with that that school of thought, and I was very surprised when I saw this particular. Obviously, the other graphic had the common sort of players across the different sort of ranks at the moment. However, if we look at this one you can see Brian Mbumo right at the bottom of that list. So we, for those that are listening on Spaces, again, we'll try and sort of get a a tweet out there from Foad, who's done this visual, but we've got a visual that has template ownership trends, and obviously at the top we've got Salah, Haaland, Areola, Watkins, Tsimikas, the usual sort of suspects that we've got in the current template, which is very, very strong. But in the bottom sort of 4 or 5, I mean, I'm surprised that Archer was actually in the bottom 5 there as well, given that most are playing 3-5-2 in their formations at the moment. But Brian Mbumo is sitting fourth from last in that, and then we've got Gordon, Anderson, and Gabrielle, at the bottom there. But yeah, I was very surprised to see Mbumo, and you're right. Like we're kind of. I think realistically, you can't get the team that we saw earlier, like the combination, like just from a price point of view, unless you've got incredible team value. Just not going to get that. And Franz just mentioned in the chat as well, saying Eze is next, and he's not even on this list at the moment because he's been obviously injured for quite a while and has just come back. But Mbumo, 27%, 25%, 25%, 25% owned at all of those ranks. So from 10K to 1 mil. Not surprised. Not surprised.
Yeah, but a word of warning on that. People are very engaged at this stage in terms of content, in terms of fixtures. They know he had difficult fixtures. He played Liverpool, where he blanked. He has Arsenal next. I can assure you, when he plays Luton at home, the Mitoma 40% will be down to 10, and that will all go to Mbumo. The Diaby 30% or even 42% will be down to 15 or 20, and that will all go to Mbumo. So opportunities will come where Mbumo may be 50%, but that'll, it will be 50. He won't be the bottom 5 when he plays the easy fixture, which is Luton, and then he has a good run.
That's right.
So yeah, Eze is another one. I think Fran is right. The thing with midfield is, this is why midfield, for me, ownership should not matter at all. I mean, Palmer's not here at all. Palmer's in my team, and he will be starting every week from game week 16 onwards.
Yeah.
But the problem is, if he's in the team, Son is in the team, Saka's in the team, Salah's in the team, there's one more spot for someone else. So if that is Mbumo, I won't have Bowen. I won't have Gordon. That's the season. You just cannot have everybody. And so ownership shouldn't come into it at all.
I agree, and this is where, like, I look at where I am. I somehow captaining Watkins. Somehow I only dropped by sort of 5%. In sort of, I got a 5% red arrow, and it's very surprised seeing that. But that's also because I own Haaland and Salah, in the team, and so captaining Watkins, who did get a return, wasn't as painful as those that had probably captained Son or Rashford. Not Rashford, sorry, Bruno. Many managers who still have Bruno in the team. But you're absolutely right. We can't have them all. And I really loved what you did. I think it was not last game week, but the game week before. So perhaps game week 11, where you brought in Nketiah, in your team. And then obviously he rotated really well with Palmer as well. And so, I think it's those types of moves where I think we need to, like, I know I need to get better at sort of preempting and sort of anticipating a little bit more. And something I was doing a lot more of, last year. But however, I think what's been really conflicting in my mind is how am I going to make progress? Because I feel like I'm behind on the template, but I'm not anymore after I had wildcarded. And so just hearing you say, forget the EO, forget the ownership, and just focus on, the players that you want to bring in based on the fixtures and how they're emerging a little bit more is really helpful. But just with that, my question really around that is so you saw the opportunity to jump onto Nketiah despite everyone sort of coming back at you. I remember sort of seeing the replies to that. but you still swam against the current and went for it.
It was a punt. I mean, it's you can't take credit for something after it working out. I mean, he could have been benched for that game. He was benched against Burnley, and I would
Yeah.
have looked like an idiot. But this is why I felt after wildcard, if 14 of your 15 are good enough, and if you can take that little bit of a risk, I don't even, it's not a bad pick, but it's a risky pick because if he starts against Sheffield United and Burnley, you're in the money because
Yeah.
he hogs a lot of big chances. Same like Darwin, but Darwin is obviously a more safe starter for Liverpool and possibly even a more attacking team. But Nketiah is like a mini Darwin where you get him, and if you can target these punts in small fixture blocks where
Yeah.
you have good fixtures for a run, where like Eze is a good example. He has 4 great fixtures. So yes, punts don't work out in instantly, but if over 4 weeks you have somebody who's got great fixtures, and this season also is one where you have 6 or 7 really bad teams, so you will get these opportunities of fixture blocks. Sometimes it works with Nketiah, sometimes it doesn't, like a Mitoma, or we'll see if it works with Eze. But I again think that you don't need to go that different for the sake of it, because let's say if it didn't work out, let's say if I wasn't on wildcard and Nketiah gets benched against Sheffield United, now suddenly I have a problem. I need to ship him out. But
Yeah.
at the same time, let's say Saka limps off from that same game.
Yeah.
Now my team is 2 transfers behind anybody else because I need to first deal with Nketiah. Then I need to think about taking out Saka. So not only am I not I'm only fixing the problems, I'm not going for the next upside pick like an Eze or an Mbumo because I'm still fixing the problems indoors. So you need to always have an look at your team, benchmark it to a wildcard team,
Yeah.
and say, how far am I from this team? If you're 1 or 2 transfers away, which of course, if you are on wildcard, that's where you are, it's okay to be a little bit punty. Now, if you're 3 weeks away from a wildcard, your second bench is Livramento or Lascelles. Your
Lascelles.
third bench is a non-playing player. Now you have to be more careful about your transfer. So if you're thinking about, look, Son didn't look great, I should think about Son to Bowen. Well, think about that really hard, because if Son scores a brace in the next game and you're again getting twitchy fingers to get him back, you're now 2 transfers behind people who've got Son.
That's right.
So have conviction in the changes that you want to make to your team. And if you do that, then don't panic. So if you do take out Son, sorry.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. So if you do take out Sun, then you need to basically be aware and do it for a longer period where you have conviction on whoever you've got him in instead of, and you won't sort of be tempted to go back to a player like that in the near term.
Yeah, yeah. I'm currently feeling a little bit like that with Matoma. You know, I brought in Matoma on my wildcard, and he's been benched. There's obviously rotation there, and he got a cheeky return a couple of game weeks ago. Like I'm all in for that, but I've definitely got my eye on Mbumo. You know, bringing back Mbumo, and also thinking about bringing in Eze as well. So I agree. I think like what you say there, especially about the shorter sort of fixture blocks. I think that's a really valuable perspective. Rather than looking at it as, I think like last season I was playing where I was holding on to players for longer periods of time. There was a bit more consistency there and a bit more, I guess like with the amount of sort of doubles we had as well last season as well, it just made sense to kind of, be a little bit more steady. But this time round, I feel like I need to do more of that still, and be patient with it, but also look for those shorter fixture blocks where there's opportunity as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, the template will change a lot because this season, again, the odd thing about this season is there is the AFCON and the Asia Cup happening in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
So Salah will leave people's teams, Son will leave people's team, Mbumo will leave people's teams, and things will change. Again, how people react to that. Do they spread all these funds around? Do they get Salah back? The blanks will come from game week 18, game week 25, game week
That's
29.
right.
There'll be other opportunities. Just if we play well, play with good decisions, we don't have to force it. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. Yeah, absolutely. This is probably a really good opportunity to just say thank you to everyone who's listening on Spaces, especially. Apologies, you probably don't see a lot of the visuals that are coming up on YouTube. So if you do want to pop over to YouTube, feel free to do so as well. I am sort of grabbing your like your avatar on Twitter or X from Spaces onto YouTube as well. So yeah, thank you again for being there, and to everyone that's on YouTube as well in the chat, and also those that have subscribed and have liked as well. It's probably a good time to also say that please like and subscribe, and lovely to have you guys there. And like I say, I've been doing these very, very much off the cuff over the last 3-ish months now. It's been it's been a lot of fun, like chatting to the community, whether it's been solo through Spaces and then putting the videos up onto YouTube, and occasionally getting on guests, and today we have Pras as well. So yeah, thank you for being here again, Pras, and so please do like and subscribe and share as well if you enjoy this type of content. Pras, is probably a good opportunity to jump into, planning. However, before I do jump there, one last question around, the EO, and just for everyone that asked around how do we make up, like ranks, especially with picking play. Like, so are you saying that we should just continue sort of picking the players that we think are going to score the most points, and despite what the EO is sort of suggesting, and be patient with it, and then looking for some of those players where there are good sort of short-term fixtures that may be coming up, or like like a flurry of fixtures that are good, and not to make sort of wild punts as well, because a lot of people are thinking that as well. Like, do we just make crazy punts here and there? What do you reckon?
I think you summarized it well. I think you need to, I see a comment from who's that? FPL Crisp? No, FPL Crisis. So very much pick your poison type season targeting fixture blocks. That's actually a great summary, because you will have the temptation at various points. Should I switch to a Gordon when he plays Bournemouth, or a Bowen when he plays Burnley, or a Mitoma when he plays Sheffield United?
Yeah.
All of them will score points in the next 4 weeks. So as long as you've got your guy, just hope that he does equally well or maybe better than the guys that other people have. And if he does terribly worse than the others, you've just been unlucky. So that's the way to sort of think about it in my mind.
Yeah, love it. Brilliant. Thank you, Pras. So for those that are watching on YouTube, and Pras, I will get this on our screen as well. So I'm just going to bring up Lego Mane's. So thank you, Lego Mane. I think I saw you in the Spaces, or you may have popped off, but really appreciate your hop on, hop off, and all these charts that Lego Mane does. They're so helpful, really, really good. And so on YouTube, I've just changed the screen, so they should be able to see like a larger version of it. But Pras, so when I on first glance, I got really confused looking at this. I was like, what is going on here? There's that many easy fixtures coming up. But obviously what Legamane has done is he's put in the recovery period, basically, between, you know, the fixtures that are coming up. There is a lot of congestion, that we're going to be experiencing fairly soon as well. So yeah, Pras, talk us through sort of this diagram and this chart even. Yeah.
Look, I think, again, experienced FPL managers will tell you that in December is when the season is won or lost, in terms of how well you will do or not, because I think there's 7 deadlines in December. Serious managers will make their transfers in the 7 deadlines. Some of the less engaged managers will enjoy some turkey with some wine and miss the deadlines. That's not how you want to make the gains, but on a serious note, this is when you sort of you make your bread, or you earn your bread as an engaged manager. And it's not just about meeting deadlines, it's about understanding these blocks, because you won't have content for all the 7 deadlines. I mean, you may have, we've got some very hardworking content creators, but people won't be spoon-fed. These are the bandwagons, these are the fixtures, this is what is happening.
Yeah.
So you need to sit in November and have a good view of where your team is going. And of course, things never work out the way you envisage it, but at least you need to know what are the blocks, how is this panning out. When you're on holiday, you don't need to be worrying about all the, so that's why looking at this stuff is helpful now.
Yes.
And last but not least, it's important because with the fixture crunch also comes a period where rotation happens, unexpected injuries happen. So it's a mess, going into December. This is why, for me personally, I actually don't care about my rank before December. End of December, when I start, is
Love
when I
it.
start caring about my rank, where I think, okay, now I've been through this really difficult period of, fixture crunch, and, injuries and rotation. And if I've come out of it, and if I'm still, struggling around a million, that's terrible. I'm not doing as well as I normally do. If
Yeah.
I'm sub 400 million or something in terms of rank at coming out of Christmas, then I'm confident that I'm looking at another sub 50K or even a 10K season. So that's why this is important. Now let's get into this deeper.
Yeah.
So why is this important for Man City? So Man City is going to be a team that I think we'll all be tripled up on by game week 19, which is
100%.
very strange because that's the end of the Christmas period. But we will have to, because Man City are off to the Club World Cup
Yeah.
in game week 18. So they will blank. So they have a blank against Brentford.
Brentford. Yeah.
And it's very likely that it'll be rescheduled for game week 20, giving them a double game week of Sheffield United at home and Brentford at home.
Yeah.
So people will want to have Haaland on their bench for this blank in 18 and add, two more Man City, and maybe even add a Mbumo if they've sold, or maybe even have Mbumo on the bench in game week 18. So this is where a dud player, let's say you have already a Mubama at 4.3, you
Yes.
have already a 3.8 defender,
Yeah.
you're already one player short in game week 18 if you have Mbumo and Haaland as well. Of course, you have transfers leading up to it, but this is why you need to be thinking about it now on what is your team looking like in game week 18. Maybe you may say, actually, I might even free hit in game week 18 because I want to keep double Man City. I want to have maybe even a Flecken and a Mbeumo going into 18. All of that you need to plan and think about. So Man City, very, very important in that period. One other thing which is very important from this chart is this game week 14, 15, 16 block, which is actually a week away. Well, a week after we come out of the international break.
That's right.
Because that all happens in 8 days. Because game week 15 is a midweek. It's the first midweek Premier League fixture of the season. So then this chart becomes very important to see rest periods on who is actually screwed over, for the lack of the better word, for in game week 14, 15, 16. And there's three
Look,
teams that will jump out here.
I was going to
Sorry.
say, no, look, I swear a lot in my streams anyway. Like, we're pretty fucked, basically, during this
Yeah.
period.
Yes.
It's,
Exactly.
so,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Liverpool, for sure. For sure. Because it's the dreaded Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday deadline. All managers hate it. Pep has said it, he hates it. Klopp has said he hates it because, just imagine you finish a game on Sunday, you have Monday recovery period, then Tuesday preparation, you have a game on Wednesday. Sometimes if it's an away game, so let's look at Liverpool, they play
Yep.
Fulham at home on game week 14, recover on Monday, then they have to travel to Sheffield United for a Wednesday, then they have to travel to Crystal Palace for a Saturday. Absolutely brutal schedule. This makes you think about players like a Simicas or a Darwin
Yep.
Núñez. And also on the other side of it, it makes you think about holding on to players like Salah. Not that people are looking to sell him, but players like that where this guy will get 90 minutes, even if he's,
That's
if he
right.
has a little ego, even if he's traveling, even if he's tired. This is the time when you want your nail players.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so that was Man City very quickly. Arsenal's actually schedule is not too bad because, their game week 14, 15, 16 schedule
It's
is,
just a
a
little bit spread
Saturday,
out. Yeah.
Tuesday and a Saturday. So that's actually normal Champions League type
Yeah.
schedule. And the other thing I noticed about Arsenal is they don't have a lot of travel. So Brentford is obviously in London.
Yeah, true.
Then they have the home game with Lens in London at home. Wolves is at home. Luton is close to London, actually very close
That's
to them,
right.
30 minutes.
Yep.
Villa is a couple of hours from Arsenal. Um, so then Brighton at home as well. So apart from PSV away, they don't have a lot of travel between now and game week 17. Good thing for having your Arsenal triple up. Good thing if Saka looks a little bit tired, he
Oh
should
my
probably
God,
continue to play.
Saka is giving me anxiety at the moment, but just because he's not, and this is part of the issue, right? So, one of the questions we had, and I had as well, was, what sort of players do we consider being a rotation risk during this tight fixture run? So, like you mentioned Simicas and this is where I get a little bit nervous about Saka as well, because he's not looked that great, over the last couple of games, like for a while actually. Like, poor guy has been flogged so much. He's not looking himself at the moment. So which players during I know we're still going through a couple more of the the
Yeah.
fixtures and the team, but perhaps we can also include like which players in your mind would be potentially a risk owning during that period, especially.
Look, I think during this period, if you can get a player that is reasonably nailed on penalties, um, that's what you. So from Arsenal, you're talking Saliba and Saka. No matter what we say, Saka is still the guy. He
Yeah.
keeps playing. He had this record of starting 80 plus games before this. I think Arteta sees Saka as like a Salah, right? As somebody who has to get used to playing midweek games, who has to get used to playing 90 minutes. And for lack of a better word, he is the talisman. And I think with Arsenal, we're a little bit quick to come up with our narratives on how they're looking, but they haven't actually had Martinelli, Jesus, and Saka play together at all this season. So
True.
you just have to keep faith,
Yes.
because over a longer term sample, which is over a season and a half, we've seen Arsenal under Arteta being an attacking side who score goals, get penalties. That's it, because there is no alternative. Let's say if the pricing was such that Son was 12 million, Saka was 11 million, and you can only afford one of the other,
Yeah,
then we can have a discussion on
that's right.
should we go Son or Saka, or shall we go, if having these two you can't get as Salah, then you have to think about that. The pricing is too soft. I mean, we don't actually need to think about having Haaland and Salah, and then it's not even a debate if you want Saka or Son. You can have both. So for me, in this period, this is the perfect period to have a Saka and hold a Saka.
Yeah.
If you don't have him, it's not panic stations as well, for all the reasons that you mentioned. You don't have him, because then captaincy comes into it as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I think I had a cringe moment there because I've got Gabriel in my team, and I've been sort of I've been toying with sort of removing him from my team for quite a while, but then he started playing and then had a random benching as well, and so I'm like, gosh, Arteta, you are playing with my emotions. But I know maybe Saliba is the pick, to have, but it feels like a wasted transfer, at the moment. And, despite sort of going into the next game week with 2 free transfers, and I'll probably end up rolling another one as well because I'm quite happy with my game week, 13 team. But it's really, yeah, I think you're right about Saka, though. I don't see myself sort of jumping off of Saka despite sort of his not being 100%, at the moment. But are there any other sort of teams that sort of stood out for you in this upcoming cluster of fixture runs that we should be, I guess, mindful of, but also should probably jump onto as well?
So I think a couple that are actually on the nicer side. So Spurs, very nice. I think they have a little bit of a crunch in 14, 15, 16, like everybody else. But it's actually the only time they play midweek. Otherwise, because they're out of the Carabao Cup, they're not in Europe. They're
Yeah,
actually fairly rested. So now Spurs have their own issues with injuries and other things with
they
Madison and,
do.
and that stuff. But it makes me think that, look, Postecoglou's team is an attacking team. Spurs, Son is still in attacking, playing out of position in attack. He's very, very likely on penalties. Now, even more likely that Madison is in even on the pitch. For me, he's the exact kind of guy that you just hold. It's absolutely fine to hold him through some of these fixtures. It's been hard to read Son's attacking output anyway. He
Yeah,
blanks against Sheffield United, he blanks against Wolves, but then he scores braces against Arsenal and Liverpool. I don't know if it was a brace or not, but he hauls against those teams.
yeah,
I think he's an easy pick this year to hold again. So I don't, I think my plan, at least in this period, is to keep hold of the penalty takers for good teams, which is Salah, Haaland, Son, Saka,
yeah,
and then you supplement them with other good picks, possibly also on penalties, like a
yeah.
Bowen, a Palmer, although Bowen's not on penalties necessarily, but Mbumo. These are the picks you sort of want to have with Bowen. At least you get 90 minutes across this period as well. So these are the
Yeah.
good picks.
I agree. I had to write that down as well because it's such an obvious thing. Like, pick the penalty takers, right? But in our obsession of trying to make progress and get rank gains and all of that, you forget the basics sometimes. Just
Yep.
like go for the
Yep.
penalty takers. I'm going to put that on my board. There you go.
Well,
This is how it
that's a general
happens.
and when your penalty taker gets a pen, it annoys the hell out of people. Like Palmer's been
Yes.
annoying people, or Mbumo was annoying people at the beginning of the season. We like that. We like our easy points. We like to get these.
Yeah.
And on the contrary, avoid minutes risk players to the extent you can. Don't have too many of them. So like you could say Darwin Núñez's upside is so huge that I'm still
Oh,
going to get him even if he
yes.
plays 80, 80, 30. Fair enough if that's
Fine.
your position. But Mitoma is not that. So you
Mm,
need to think about his exit plan. He's had his best fixtures. He's not the guy who you want to keep if he's going to sort of keep missing the odd game,
yeah.
not on pens, not on set pieces. That's something you can get rid of.
Yeah, and he's definitely on my sort of, radar to cut from the team at the moment. Yeah, it's been a bit disappointing, having him. And, in comparison, like Bowen, despite not being on pens, has been sort of ticking over. He's been returning fairly consistently, especially like away fixtures. He's been fairly consistent there. But I'm probably not going to hold Bowen, further on as well. So I need to start thinking about, how does my template now evolve a little bit more? Like, I think I'm still playing 3-5-2, just because
Yep.
like even on the cheaper side, like you say, I think Palmer's now gone up to 5.2 mil. But that's still very cheap, right? Like when you think
Very.
about sort of playing five in the middle, I don't see myself sort of switching from that anytime soon, just because of how many good players we've got available to us and in that midfield.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think in midfield people will come down to six good picks. And again, up to the gods of variance to see who does better in that period. But between Salah, San, Saka, Palmer, Bowen, and Mbumo, six excellent picks in the Christmas
Yeah,
period. Good minutes, most of them on penalties. Most of them
yeah,
are talismanic. I mean, maybe Palmer less so, but this is where you will see differences in templates where some people have a Bowen instead of a Son or a Saka or a Palmer instead of a Bowen. That affords other things within the teams. But I think people won't be too different from these 6, 7 midfielders.
yeah. I agree. So bearing in mind, obviously there's blank game week 18, and potentially a double in 20. I guess like that's probably going to happen then, isn't it?
Yep.
So, what do people that have, no Haaland do in this situation? Because, there's a fair few questions around that as well, and we'll do some Q&A shortly as well. But Crisis has just sent a message in the chat as well. This congestion period is convincing me to extend my no Haaland team till at least 16. That's fair, and I think some people are also thinking beyond 18. To especially with that double. Yeah, what's sort of a general sort of piece of advice that you can give around the no Haalanders at the moment?
Um, there's look a couple of routes. You can get to a Haaland after this week by downgrading Son. Basically because Sun's fixtures after Villa at home are Man City away, West Ham, Newcastle. So you get Man City and Newcastle as two very good defenses. So you can maybe think about doing it that way. You could otherwise wait till game week 16 and use Salah as the make weight because Salah, now people will jump on me, but Salah's fixtures basically after game week 16 are Man United, Arsenal, Burnley,
Yes.
Newcastle. Salah absolutely smashes Man United every single season. So I do have some tongue in cheek to say, it's before Man United, but why game week 16 is because Haaland plays Luton in game week
Yeah.
16. So it could present a window where you could get Haaland back through a Salah plan. Otherwise, obviously, if you can collect funds, if you have a wild card, then you can do it also that way. Or the alternative is you just wait it out till blank game week 18 and then you get Haaland after that. The only problem with that is if you wait till game week 18, then you're giving yourself essentially 2 weeks. So leading up to game week 19 and
Yeah.
leading up to game week 20 to get Haaland back, to get a couple of more Man City guys because you ideally want to triple up for game week 20.
Yeah.
So is you leave yourself too much to do just because you want to avoid having Haaland for the blank game week. It's not the end. buying game week either.
Yeah, true.
I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer on when people want to get Haaland back. I think they had a plan, and hopefully they still think that the plan is still in motion, even though Haaland's done well in two of the away games and actually not done well in the home game. So in a way,
Yeah, that's a
the
good point.
non-Haalanders have been a little bit lucky. Now they will not like this because obviously he's done well, but the
Yeah,
2 weeks where Haaland did well is the weeks where he was not well captained. The
yeah.
week where he was mass captained, he came off at halftime with a 1 pointer. So it's not been as bad as it could have been.
That's true. That's true. I know there's moments where I sort of think back to that moment where I was making a decision about keeping Haaland or ditching Haaland. And then I had more recently a mad moment, can I just say, of sort of going, yeah, I'm just going to ditch Haaland. Like the next couple of fixtures are still looking a bit tricky. Obviously, they had Chelsea and that they've got Liverpool coming
Right.
up. So I was like slight sort of bias there as well. I was like, yeah, no, these are really tough fixtures. Like surely I can ditch Haaland still. And then talked myself out of it and decided to, keep him in the team, which I'm grateful for because I probably would have had a terrible game week 12, I think. Not the tiny red arrow that I did as well. But you're right. I think like there was a lot of planning obviously going on in the scenario of removing Haaland, especially those that wildcarded in game week 8 or even earlier, but those that wildcarded in game week 8, 9, that was the time to remove Haaland from your teams and obviously there would have been some planning and thoughts gone into how do you bring him back as well. So yeah, it's an
Yep.
interesting one. I think we're going to look back at those moments at the end of this season and sort of go, yes, that was a good call, or no, that wasn't a good call. And but again, I've seen loads of people that wildcarded in game week 8 where they kept Haaland as well. So
Yeah.
it's such an interesting conversation, isn't it? Going into sort of each season now, like obviously last season was the first season that we had Haaland in the equation, but it's really frustrating having that perma captaincy kind of, debate constantly. And last season was definitely that. And this season, I've not been able to get my captaincies right so far this season. I've been between Salah and Haaland. And then occasionally I've had I think I captained Maddison against Luton, which didn't go very well. And
Right.
then I captained Watkins, last game week, which, again, I wouldn't say didn't go well because he got a return there, but didn't go as well as I hoped anyway.
That miss was terrible, right? That header. That would have
Oh,
got you 3 bonuses. Well,
don't.
sorry to bring it back in your head, but look, I don't think it was a bad decision to go for
No.
Watkins. This is one of those outcomes. I personally struggle to captain non-penalty takers. Again, you'll see a big penalty taker bias with me,
Yes.
which is why Haaland, Salah, Son, Saka are always at the top of my list for looking at.
Yeah.
But Watkins has been an insane form. Villa have been in insane form at home, so I do get the reasons why you did it.
Yeah, no, I don't regret that. I think it was a very, calculated, risk that I was taking or calculated decision that I was making even. And yeah, and look, I would probably do it again. And I say that very lightly as we're going into game week 13, after the international break where captaincy is going to be another contention again, right? So do we captain Haaland, Salah, or I was looking at Bowen, Bowen's away at the moment to
Burnley.
Burnley, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's a really good captaincy option. But like Bowen's been playing really well. But this is the thing: the narrative is there. The story, leading up to those moments are definitely there. The data is there. That like for example, Villa playing not losing a game at home, and they're playing so well. They've been scoring more than 3 goals, and it's like, oh, I've got to captain Watkins. Surely, he'll get the returns there. And it's the same with Bowen. I'm sure he'll get a return, but will it be comparable to, let's say, a Haaland scoring a brace against Liverpool, which is possible, right? I hate to say it as a Liverpool
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fan, but yeah, it's possible. Any thoughts on where
Yeah.
your captaincy is for 13?
Yeah. I think it's going to be Haaland. I don't have Bowen.
Yeah,
Not that I would consider, again, not a penalty taker. So I wouldn't, personally, I'm not turning people away from him.
yeah,
I would, for me, it's between Son and Haaland. And just given how Spurs were against Wolves, even though I think it's one game sample and Wolves were actually very good. So I'm not worried, but it's put me off enough from captaincy that I
Yeah.
just think it's a easy home game for, not easy home game as such, but it's an easy decision because it's a home game for Man City. And yeah, unless there's any international break niggles that we need to worry about, Haaland pretty much will get 90 minutes because it's an important game. So for me, it's going to be him.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think I'm definitely closer to that that pick as well, like with Haaland. And Marcus just said, you know, I was 90% sure I was going to be selling Haaland. I have to admit, I was very close because he'd blanked, you know, a couple of times, right? And this is the thing, you know, the 6-1 sort of win against Bournemouth. I was like, wow, Haaland didn't get a single return. So, you know, what's the probability of this happening again? And it has happened previously as well. And so we've also seen that in Alvarez. You know, Alvarez hasn't had many returns, you know, in the last couple of game weeks either. And so I think he got an assist. But you know, in terms of like, I managed to watch that whole match against Chelsea, and yeah, I was really surprised that I felt like I hardly noticed him as well on the field. So yeah, it's really strange there. But yeah, I mean, these guys as a team, as a unit, they're playing really well. So can't really ignore that. But Pras, look, we're hitting sort of the 1 hour sort of 20 mark. Thank you so much again, you know, for sort of coming on the show. You know, it's been really good to have a ramble and just a general chit chat, as well as, you know, talk FPL as well. And thank you to everyone that is tuned in on Spaces, especially. You know, appreciate that you can't see a lot of the visuals there, and those that are on YouTube as well. It's been great sort of, you know, seeing some of your comments and things coming through. So please like the video as well, the stream. It's very, very much appreciated. Have we got time for questions? Because there's loads of questions, and maybe we can treat the questions like a rapid fire sort of round.
Yeah, we can do 10 minutes of rapid fire if you want. Yeah, happy to.
Yeah, happy. Yeah, that would be great. I've collated most of the questions in thank you bookmarks and Twitter that lets you sort of do bookmarks. So we've got lots of questions. I'll start sort of, you know, from the bottom actually. So yeah, please post your questions if you have any more. You know, in the chat as well. But we'll start going through these, and I'll keep an eye on the YouTube chat as well. So Alex Ball has a question around, you know, 2 frees this week. I plan to move to 3-5-2 by downgrading Alvarez and bringing in Mbumo, but I'm wondering if sticking with 3 up front and moving Alvarez to Darwin is a better move. For context, I also have Son, Salah, Saka, Bowen, Watkins, and Haaland.
So, quick answer to this is it'll be hard for you to move to Alvarez to Darwin without downgrading one of these midfielders. And these midfielders are all really awesome. And for all the reasons that we've talked about for you know, Darwin maybe being riskier than other picks, I think it's okay to come down to 2 attackers. I think even if you're thinking about a 3, then also think about Solanke. I like him a lot. Again, another 90 minutes guy on penalties with good fixtures. If he rotates well with some of your other players, has a good fixture in game week 18 blank as well, that's something to think about. I wouldn't have him as my 7th attacker, but maybe as my 8th who rotates. So that could be an option.
Nice. So we've got a question from Rue here. Shout out to FPL Rue, one of our Aussie guys, or English Aussie, like me. So who needs to become an option for people to start going 3-4-3, or are there too many good midfielders? So I think you mentioned Solanke there as potentially, I guess, like a third, right? Up front.
As a third, definitely as a third. And by the way, after AFCON, everyone will be on Darwin. I think everyone will have Darwin as their attacker. So we will probably all be on 3-4-3, and it'll be enabled by Palmer, who's basically only 5.5. So you can actually just stretch your budget to actually have a 5-3, and you rotate your attackers, which is actually not a bad thing to do, even though sometimes you'll have some bench points, but that's fine.
Yeah. And since we're doing it in a rapid fire sort of way, I'm going to take a question that was in the chat as well. So this is from Dan Blackwolf. So Dan's saying, do you enjoy helicopter rides and literal helicopter views?
I've never been on a helicopter, but I do like,
God.
you know, I do. It's you know, a lot of people's pet peeves, but when I present for work, I do talk macro view and helicopter view a lot. That's how it came about in Burning Questions, and obviously then it became a thing.
It became a thing, but it's so funny. I think we exchanged a couple of messages a while ago, where I was heavily watching so much like of just FPL content in my first season. I was weaving FPL related conversations at work. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
weaving in things like what would the effective value be if we did X, Y, and Z? And they, I've got people looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Well, the decision that we make, maybe we can measure this over time." Anyway, so funny, but it's yeah, like I know exactly what you mean. So question from Claire. Looking forward to this tomorrow. Thank you, Claire. What do you would you think about removing Trippier soon with so many injuries amongst the Newcastle squad? I think we had a similar question as well from someone else. So there was a
There
few
were a
around
couple
this
of
one.
Newcastle questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Look, Newcastle's schedule isn't the best. So they have Chelsea at home, then they play
Mm,
PSG away, which is actually a must win, even though it's a very difficult fixture going to Paris and winning there.
yeah.
But they will have a big eye on Europe because then they have Milan at home as well. So there is a fixture crunch.
Mm,
Botman is coming back from injury. That's what we heard yesterday. Now he may not be back in time for game week 13, but they are struggling with
yeah.
injuries. So if you wanted to take some funds out, I think you could do it. I mean, a lot of people who wildcarded in game week 10 didn't have Trippier for this reason because of these tougher fixtures. But I would say
Mm,
one thing: Newcastle at home
yeah.
are one of the best defenses that we have in the league.
I
So
agree.
I don't think Chelsea at home, Man United at home are tough fixtures. Everton away is not really a tough fixture. Spurs away is. Fulham home is a great fixture. Luton away is a great fixture. So I think holding on is also not a bad thing.
Yep, agree. That's good response there. Tanky in the chat on YouTube has also asked around replacing Alvarez for December as the next striker, and Solanke. Yeah, I think we sort of talked a bit about Solanke there, but also Darwin. Anyone else that sort of comes to mind?
Archer,
Archer. Yeah,
just
just
you don't have to go three attackers.
well, this is it. And I think we talked about sort of how good that midfield, the availability of players in the midfield and such cheaper players as well. Question from Nuclear Atoms. Since there are so many midfielders to choose from, which ones are prioritizing from the likes of Palmer, Bowen, Mbumo, Saka? Like in my mind, that's all of them, basically. But what do you reckon, Pras?
I mean, this is the thing. If you add Son and Salah here, these are the six that we talked about in our conversation on
Yeah,
midfielders. So, I mean, if Nuclear Atoms wants to check that out in terms of our views, I don't think any of these six are bad picks. So you'll have to pick
no.
five, unfortunately, and not root for the other one. And it'll depend on who you go out of them, will depend on your budget aspirations. So if let's say you avoid Son,
Yeah.
and you have these four plus Salah, then that'll maybe afford you a Darwin Núñez or that'll get you a Trippier. Really depends on who
Mm.
you want to lose and what you do with the money.
Agree. Yeah. It's going to be tough actually, like making, I know I found it tough to sort of go Matoma, for instance, over bringing in Diaby, for example, at similar sort of price points as well. FPL Benchwarmers, my question would be, what do you think Darwin's start rate is now? How many do you think he'll be benched for over December? It's a good question, like given the fixture sort of, congestion that we've got coming up as well.
Look, I mean, I think he's clearly first choice now. Klopp
Mm.
loves him. He's been talking
Oh
about
yeah.
his work rate. I mean, you're the Liverpool fan, so you should
Yeah,
also opine there.
I'm definitely going to be going there as well. Like Watkins is not lasting in my team that much longer. I think he may sort of see it through till Bournemouth maybe, but I'm tempted to even take him out for Bournemouth and then bring in Darwin because Liverpool have got Fulham. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, with Watkins to Darwin, people just need to remember and not to confuse your plans. But
yeah,
in game week 18, Watkins is the best captain.
I know.
And that's the
Yeah,
blank game week. There's no Haaland. Salah plays Arsenal. So Watkins plays Sheffield United at home. So,
yeah,
you may want to think about either a route back to Watkins. Just think about that team in game week 18
yes,
without Haaland and Mbumo. And you really want to have a rotation risk, Darwin. But I think we agree. His first choice, to answer quite simply, he probably misses the odd game over the crunch
yeah,
period, maybe game week 15, maybe the game after this international break, which is City.
yeah.
So but largely he should play most games.
Yeah, no, that's a really good reminder. Keep game week 18 at the back of our minds as well. So I've been thinking about this as well. I think I mentioned it on here as well. Been wondering the same. Is there a reason to keep cash anymore? I presume he means cash the player, not cash in the
Yeah,
bank kind
cash
of
the player.
thing.
Look, I don't think so. I think if you have the luxury of keeping, it's also okay for the reasons of game week 18. But if
Yeah.
I look at Villa's fixtures from now until game week 18, I don't think there's a clean sheet there necessarily.
Mm,
Spurs away, difficult clean sheet. Bournemouth away, you saw with Newcastle. I mean,
yeah.
Bournemouth do attack, so they could keep a clean sheet, but they haven't yet shown us, Villa, that they're a great, great defense. They're showing us a great attack,
Yes.
but not really a great defense. And when you add to the fact that their away form is very different from their home form, again, Bournemouth away doesn't scream clean sheet. Then you have Man
Mm,
City and Arsenal at home, doesn't scream clean sheets. Brentford away, no clean sheet. So then you get to this game week 18, which is Sheffield United at
it's
home.
the only one.
I don't think you need to hold cash for all that period just for that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It seems like Cash has had a lot of free reign to just roam around, and with that, there's very little structure in his game as well. It just which is not like I don't know. Like Cash had some really. I think he had one double-digit return at the earlier end of the
Before
season.
everyone had him.
Yeah, before everyone had him, basically. Yeah. So FPL Vib. So from Vibud, is Archer playable over the next two fixtures as they're the best possible fixtures for an attacker? Yeah,
Well, the
that's a
best
good
possible
question.
fixture for an attacker is if Archer plays his own team, which is Sheffield United at home, which he can't. But I think, yeah, he's playable this week. A lot of
Yeah,
people like myself who have
I'm
Palmer, genuinely thinking that I may just play Archer at home. Next week, the thing is, a lot of your other players will have good fixtures as well, so you may not need Archer. But he's playable. But again, not on pens. So sorry to make this a theme,
no.
but he's not on pens, so I don't trust him so much. But I think for a one-off game, yeah, why not?
Yeah, this is why we have a playing, third player on the forward line, right? Like it's such a cheap one
Yep.
anyway. So we have got a question in the chat. So I'll sort of move between them, as we're going as well. So we've got a question from Mecca. I'm hoping Mex. I hope I'm saying your name right. On a 3-4-3 with midfield of Bowen, Saka, Son, Salah, 4.3 point forwards.
Hmm.
Haaland, Watkins, Alvarez, two free transfers. Is this the week to go 3-5-2 and bring in Mbumo, Chukwuemeka, Alvarez to 4-3? Thanks, great stream. Thank you so much. Yeah, interesting to switch. Is it? What do you reckon?
Oh, well, he's just basically saying he wants to take Alvarez to Mbumo.
Yeah.
And this doesn't have to be the week because Mbumo plays Arsenal. But if you wanted to do it over the next couple of weeks, yeah, maybe not the worst. But
Not
I mean, if
bad.
you are going to that structure, think about maybe you can make another move that gets you 0.2 or 0.3 so that you can get an Archer instead of a Mubama or someone because you
Yeah.
want a bench for game week 18 and beyond for the Christmas period.
Yeah, agree. So Troy have the funds to replace Cash and Trips. However, with Newcastle issues, do I now fade him and go with someone like Saliba instead? Already own Gabriel.
I think Trippier is a better pick than Saliba, but he's obviously much more expensive.
Yeah.
So I think Saliba double Arsenal defense is something that I'm considering myself
Oh,
from next
interesting.
week.
Yeah.
Um, it's simply because in that fixture crunch they play Wolves at home, Luton away, uh, Villa Brighton not really great, but at least for those couple of games, I think getting Arsenal defense is good, solid. And then you can move Saliba on to a Porro or something because Spurs have good fixtures after that, or
True.
you can move them on to other players in that price bracket like Reece James, who've got good fixtures. So I say Reece James with a little bit of tongue in cheek,
Oh,
given the
I'm not
past issues.
sure. Yeah, I have
Um,
that. You just mentioning Reece James gave me a little bit of anxiety.
it's if the fixtures are there and he's still fit around Christmas, why not?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And you mentioned Porro and going back to Spurs defense. Yeah, like from a timing point of view, I'm not entirely sure when we're expecting Spurs to bounce back like from their defense line. Hopefully the suspensions and all of that would have passed by then as well.
I think after game week 16, they should be good. So they play Forest away, then Everton, then Brighton, then Bournemouth at home. Good fixtures from 17. And I think Porro also benefits from no Maddison in the sense that he takes more set pieces. So good pick after game week 17, I think, after game week 16.
Yeah. No, I agree. So question from Crisis, two-part question. Should we treat the goalkeeper position as a dead spot given Areola ownership, or is it time to upgrade? And for those who have the cash to splash, is what I'm reading from that, to sell Haaland, which of Son, Saka or Trippier would you lose to help fund his return? Gut says Saka.
I would say Trippier. To answer the second question first, because of the reasons we talked about just now, I like Saka in this period. I think people are getting fidgety on him a little bit earlier than I would like. I mean, I would need at least 6-7 more game weeks of data to see that he's really not doing anything.
Yeah, he's digressed,
and including with Jesus to start losing faith. And goalkeeper position, it's the lowest scoring position. And we've got a gift of his 4.0 or 4.2 keeper who's not doing really well. But if you look at the fixture ticker, West Ham are still top 3 in the fixture ticker for the next 7-8 game weeks. So just stay patient.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything special. I think if in game week 16 I come to a position where I have 0.6 just lying around in the bank and I have no transfers to make, I might look at second keeper to Flecken so that I have a double game weeker keeper sitting as a side. But I think other than that, you don't need to force it. I think Areola is fine.
Yeah. I had a moment where I was transferring out a goalkeeper, my, sort of the second goalkeeper, instead of taking out Tsimikas to free up some funds, bringing in Lascelles because I was benching Tsimikas, but I just didn't have the funds to go for anyone, I had 0.1 mil in the bank, so there was just no way it was happening. Gaurav is asking a question around Son to Salah in game week 14. Picks will, dead end in... Picks till we dead end in game week 18 before wildcard. Yes, to Son to Salah, I guess.
Could do, yeah. I think we talked about, again, also in the no Haaland plan that you could look to get off Son for a short period of time. So if he has a wildcard in hand, it could make sense.
Yeah, agree.
With the caveat that Son could do well in a tough fixture, like he's done in the past.
That's what I mean. And we're seeing that from Palmer as well. So, like Son's doing well, of course, but Palmer, at 5.2 mil now, I'm like, well, rather bring in Palmer in my team as well. So
Palmer's been a little bit lucky with 4 pens. Spurs have not got a single pen this season. Imagine if Son had scored 3 other penalties in addition to all the things that he's done so far. I don't think we'd be talking about selling Son at all.
No, I agree. And I think his price point is really interesting as well, because if you think about it, he's only a little bit expensive than Saka, right? So there is an opportunity to switch between them as well. Samuel, FPL, do you think Alvarez is a hold? I think we touched on that a little bit, but
we did.
Could be. Yeah.
Could be fine. City players are fine. You need to think about the blank eventually in game week 18. So if you wanted to move on as well, I think it's okay.
Yeah, and I think Commander had a similar sort of question about Dom Solanke as well. Neutral point of view. It's trying to considerably better sequence of fixtures coming up. Sensible. Yeah, I think we covered that around Dom Solanke there as well. So that's great. So much well again. Do you think Crystal Palace is looking better attack-wise after returning of Eze and Lise? Would it be wise to invest in the attack, forward or mids? I already have Johnstone. Yes. What do you reckon, Pras?
I mean, Edward is decent, but again, not on pen. So as a third attacker, he's okay. Eze is great on pens, but he suffers from having 6 other good picks in midfield. So you could go there. But then who are you sacrificing? So I think Palace is decent, but with Palace, I always worry how much goal output do they have? Do they score more than 2 goals a game? They don't really.
No.
So, if you're picking the penalty taker who's on set pieces, I think Eze is a good pick. But apart from him, not really.
Not really. Yeah, agree. We've only got a few more questions to go, so almost there. Thank you, Pras, again, for taking
Oh,
so
of
many of
course.
these questions. It's been great, sort of, chatting to you in between, but also taking some of these questions as well from the community. Really appreciate it. Faiz is asking best defender 4.5 or under.
That's a tough one.
There's a couple of responses there, as well. Interesting.
I mean,
Reem.
okay, Fulham have got good fixtures. I would still say Konza from Villa because, despite, tougher fixtures now, if you hold on to him, you have a good player for game week 18 blank. And then after that, Villa have good fixtures again. So I think he could be a decent shout.
Yeah.
I still like Livramento. I mean, despite him not starting,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think long term, as long as, Burn is out, I think he could nail that place. He will be a risk. He'll be a rotation risk. He won't start every game. I like the upside, so I still gonna back him.
Yeah, yeah. I feel slightly nervous after seeing I think I saw a tweet about Botman being back on grass and training, and I was
Yeah,
like, damn it, I just brought in the cells. But hopefully, at least for another couple of game weeks. But I don't feel so bad about benching the cells as well, just because he's 4 mil, and I saved a lot of
correct,
money there
correct.
as well. So
I mean,
might be a
this is the
problem
reason I
later.
didn't go for Lascelles.
Yeah,
Was simply game week 18. I didn't
yeah,
want to have that as an additional thing I need to deal with before game week 18. But that's long time, long way away. You still have
yeah,
transfers
yeah.
to deal with.
Yeah, that's true, and I've got currently a couple of 2 free transfer scenarios that I'm hoping be all right.
Right.
Great question from FPL Randerson. Best self-care, self-medication regimen for those of us who ventured without Haaland for the stretch of the City fixtures.
Just don't watch the games.
Don't watch the
I mean,
games.
this is why I struggle with this stuff because I watch a lot of football over the weekends, and I just can't handle it. So for people who have a better, healthier relationship with FPL football, just don't watch the games and
Yeah.
accept the outcome.
Yeah, agree. I just don't. Yeah, I mean, for me, my club comes first over FPL. So despite sort of not captaining Salah, I was still like I watched the whole match. I didn't get to watch it sort of live just because it was on at stupid o'clock over here. But
Right.
for me, it's really important to just enjoy the matches and sort of look at it for what it is and detach from that decision making, the outcome part of the decision
Right.
making process and focus entirely on the decision making process.
Right.
So, question from FPL Pratt, and actually, before I go to the question, happy Diwali to everyone as well.
Yeah.
Those that celebrate Diwali around the world. I celebrate Diwali. Pras, you celebrate Diwali. How was
I do
Diwali
as
for
well.
you? Actually, was it good?
Very hectic, very hectic. I mean, the fact that it happened on a Sunday, there was like
Oh,
festivities on a Saturday. We went out in the evening, and then Sunday. I have some family here, so met them. Then we did a little bit of fireworks, very very little. I know people do. It doesn't
oh yeah, it's
benefit
wild.
everyone like the pets and whatever, but we did a little bit, and yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, nice.
And you
We
you
don't
had
get to
you had a
do.
good one as well.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was so nice. So I've got family over here. I've got my sister and her family as well, and we've got a big community over on this side. And as I was we were chatting just before the stream as well that it's I'm Gujarati and it's our New Year as well on Tuesday, although it's Wednesday for me today. So it's been nice getting lots of messages from friends, family in the UK, which is where most of my family is and friends are that are celebrating. But we've got a really big community over here as well. But we're not allowed to do
Right.
fireworks. So if I was at my parents' place, we would have done a shit ton of fireworks in the backyard, and that's when where like when you're watching the fireworks from South London. So my parents live in Croydon, and so if I was watching the fireworks on Diwali, you can see where all the Indian families are because you're seeing
Right,
the
right, right,
fireworks going
right.
off. But we're not allowed to do fireworks over here because of bushfires, and so
I see.
yeah, it's
I
a
see.
bit limited there.
I
But
mean, to be
going,
honest, we can also in the UK also reduce it a little bit because sometimes it is excessive,
oh,
and a
well, it's
lot of
nothing like
people,
India,
pets
right?
don't like it. Oh,
Nothing
I
like
mean, but
India.
in India, you'd be surprised. Now people have stopped a lot because of air
Oh,
pollution and things like that. So
nice.
I
Yeah.
think I would be happy if sort of Diwali becomes more the cultural thing with
Yes.
lights, the
Yeah.
puja, and meeting your family. Fireworks thing
Yeah.
can come down, and that should be okay.
Yeah, I agree. And, for me, it was really nice to spend time with my family and, my nieces and just, just chill out and sort of an excuse to get dressed up as well. Like
Yeah,
always
yeah.
love. I always find the reason to wear my Indian outfit, whether it's like my saris or sort of shalwar kameez sort of styles, outfits and things like that. Because we don't have that much going on in Australia as well. Like culturally, I'm not sort of
Right,
in a location where there's lots of things going on. Not like the UK. And so
right.
the reason to wear it is not so much there. But happy Diwali again to everyone
Hmm.
celebrating. So FPL Pratt's question was with players like James and Regulon looking dangerous. Do we wait for fixtures to turn green or jump early? Pros and cons as per you.
Well, Regulion is not a pick
Ah, I
because
think you've
Van
gone on
Bissaka is
mute.
back.
Let me just check. Oh no,
Can you hear me? Hello?
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I think I can hear you, and I think I can see on spaces that I'm
Yeah, your
audible.
sound is gone. That's really strange.
Okay.
I think you
Um,
can someone in the YouTube stream just let us know if Pras is still coming through from a sound point of view. But I think on Spaces
can
you've
anyone hear
dropped
me?
off
Yeah,
there.
people are saying they can hear me. So I think it's on your side, Mira. They can hear me.
Or is it me? Can hear
So I
both
mean,
of you.
while
And
you
on
fix it,
Spaces, can you guys hear us? I can't hear
yeah,
Pras though.
both they can
That's
hear
really
both of
odd,
us.
which could make this conversation very challenging. Oh, you can hear us both. That's really interesting. I don't know why I can't hear you, Pras. Let me just see if I can fix that. However, since everyone else can hear us, you can carry on answering this question if that's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I think Regulion is not really a pick because Van Bissaka is back, and Dalot is already playing well. So basically, Regulion plays on the left, and when Van Bissaka plays, Dalot shifts to the left. So not really a pick unless there's an injury, and even then, Man United defense you don't want to get too close to. So Maguire is already there, um, who's more nailed. And then on the James side, I think yeah, he's looking to see how many minutes he plays between game week 14, 15, and 16, which are the closely squeezed in group of fixtures. If he comes through that okay, then I think it's fair play to go for James. He's only 5.2 or something, which is a ridiculous price. We saw against Man City how attacking he was. A lot of us managers have great history with James despite his troll status, so we will go there again.
I presume you've stopped. For some reason, I still can't hear you. It's really odd, but I'm glad that everyone else can hear you, and we're almost done. And I'll have to listen to whatever you say, afterwards. But we've got a question here around, I need Bowen for the Burnley game. Who do I sell between Matoma and Diaby? I've got point 0.1 in the bank.
I think both can be sold from next week. So I mean, maybe Mitoma can be held another week. Maybe you could even argue Diaby could be. So I don't think either are essential going forward. So take your pick, really. I mean, I would personally sell Diaby first because I think he's definitely a sell, whereas Mitoma, given circumstances, could be a hold. You know, if let's say Mbumo gets injured in the next game, then I think if Mitoma's fixtures are not that bad, but Aston Villa's are. So I would sell Diaby first personally.
Awesome. And again, I'm like lip reading now. I wish I had subtitles. I'm just glad that everyone else can hear us. That's the main thing. The last question, I think. So we've got a question here from FPL Rehab. Ricky, one of the biggest regrets Pras has this season so far. So, yeah, what do you reckon? What's one of the big regrets?
So there was a week in game week 7 where I had these huge red arrows as well, where I was hyping up Trippier all of early season. And basically, I had exact money to take a hit for Chilwell to Trippier, and I held off taking the hit. So, and that was the week where Trippier got 18 points. So I think that was my regret. I got him immediately after the next week, but I should have just taken the hit because he was playing Sheffield United. And yeah, that's my biggest regret so far this season.
Thank you so much. You know what? I remember doing remember doing a a conference like this actually, like during COVID. We had a lot of virtual sort of conferences and things going on, and at one point I couldn't hear, like they couldn't hear me, but everyone else could hear us, so we couldn't hear each other, and I was on a panel. So I'm just going to do some lip reading for the sake of, you know, the remainder of this conversation, but I hope that yeah, everyone can still sort of continue hearing us for the next couple of minutes as we sort of, you know, wrap up as well. So, Pras, I think that sort of pretty much brings us to the end of the stream, and you know, the questions that we've had, and I'm just going to, you know, put it back on to the larger sort of version of us anyway, and just thank you especially. So, Pras, thank you so much for joining me today for an off the cuff conversation about yourself, you know, life, FPL, everything in between, and all the good things, you know. And it's been a really good conversation around, you know, how we tackle, you know, the upcoming fixture run, and look, you know, as we sort of, you know, go into the international breaks, hopefully it's not going to feel too long as well. I know international breaks have felt very long and lengthy, especially, but hopefully it won't feel too long. And yeah, it gives us lots to think about as well. So, you know, thank you. You've given us a lot to think about, given me a lot to think about. I have been writing down lots of, you know, post-it notes that will go on my board as well. So, you know, really do appreciate you taking, you know, the time this evening, and, you know, morning for us over here, for those that have tuned in this morning as well. And actually, there's a whole bunch of people that have tuned in at, you know, 2, 3, 4 in the morning as well, wherever they are. I think, you know, anyone who's based in India, it's probably early hours of the morning as well. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and for everyone that tuned in on Spaces especially. Again, I love how we can't sort of hear each other. I can't hear you at the moment, but I'm really glad that everyone else can hear us. So thank you once again, Pras. You know, really appreciate you being, you know, with me today and sharing your FPL journey and insights and perspectives as well. Anything
My
that you'd
pleasure.
like to
And I
plug?
would, I mean, no plugs. I mean, it's fine. I think people know. I'll plug your channel actually. I have to say, you can't hear me, so you can listen to this later. But you know, I've enjoyed listening to the stuff that you've done with Nim. You know, I've sort of seen your opinions on Twitter, so I enjoy what you do, and it's a channel which is, you know, I give you, wish you all the best to grow this and to make it into something big. And that's all I have to say. So thank you for inviting me on.
Amazing. I'm gonna have to watch that back and, and get that. Thank you so much again, Pras, and thank you to everyone that has tuned in. Please like, subscribe, and please share as well. Really do appreciate it. And a great comment there by Crisis, injury time. Yeah, definitely. Assisted by technology. Yes, absolutely. Gotta love technology. Thank you again. And yeah, really appreciate it. Pras, thank you once again. Take it easy. Have a great one. And yeah, hopefully catch you all in a couple of weeks' time. And green arrows to everyone as well. And happy planning during, you know, the international break. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.